This video is brought to you and sponsored by Warhammer Total War 3, which is now available on Game Pass, but more on that in a moment. At the beginning of first lockdown, I plunged deep into Warhammer. I fell in love with gluing, painting, and most importantly, playing with little toy soldiers. One of many loves developed in that time was for demons, for bad boys of chaos, and in particular large, hulking monstrosities of greater demons. Be'lakor is a bad boy and I love it. It is for this reason that I'm excited for any and all upcoming Warhammer video games. And when I saw that Warhammer Total War 3 was coming and it was bringing with it the chaos powers of Slaanesh, Nurgle, Khorne, and Tzeentch, I got really hyped. Today's video is not going to be a review of Warhammer Total War 3 because that would be unfair. This is a paid sponsorship after all. So with that not being appropriate, I wanted to just do a first impressions video of my time with the game. I did get early access, but I didn't get to play a whole lot of it. Up to this point. At time of recording, I have played just under 10 hours, thanks to being away over the weekend for a Warhammer tournament, where I got 4th place out of 180 people, just to mention that subtly. And a Windows 11 upgrade gone wrong, that bricked my computer. I've managed 10 hours so far, which equates to 120 hours of campaign turns, both prologue and main game. And so far, this game fucking slaps. My background with the series is that I was mad keen on Rome Total War and Medieval Total War 2 back in the day, but I never got fully back into the series. Warhammer 1 and 2 were very tempting as I was a childhood Warhammer enthusiast, but I never found the time to get into them. In short, I'm a fucking scrub. Keep that in mind as I talk about the game going onward. For those of you unfamiliar with the way a Total War game plays, the gameplay loop is broken down into 2 base elements. The first is a turn-based campaign map in which you get to manage your settlements, move armies and agents of your faction around the board, explore, pledge allegiance and declare wars, and get your macro on in a turn-based setting. The second is the huge battles themselves. When 2 or more armies or settlements come to clash, you can go into a more granular, micromanaged real-time combat. These battles can really escalate in scale, with early encounters being a handful of units clashing in a field that looks a little bit like Salisbury Plain, over to huge demonic legions clashing out for survival at the yawning mouth of hell itself. The battles aren't always needed to be played either. You can actually play the macro element a lot more, the world management, with auto-battling the main battles. Of course, if you take the range yourself, you can perhaps eke out a win where the auto-battler would think you wouldn't. And the sense of scale in Total War is immense. It always has been. The series has always been impressive. But the Total War of my youth looks pathetic by comparison to this. When it comes to fighting the boss battles on the main campaign, I found myself with literally over 1,000 demons on screen under my control, all divided into individual units. Hell, a lot of my units were individual one-of units, like little monsters and robots and things. I say robots, I mean armored units. If I had taken like bloodletters en masse, I could have had like, I don't know, 10,000 bloodletters on screen. The scale is crazy. And it becomes a little bit chaotic trying to keep track of what is going on and where, but it isn't as bad as it sounds. Khorne ain't one for subtlety. And the more flesh we churn underfoot, the more skulls we add to the skull throne. Total War 3 has a central plot driving the carnage. Everybody's favourite big demon daddy Be'lakor is back from his recent model glow up on the tabletop, and he has stolen a big bear. He's imprisoned everybody's favourite bear, perhaps besides Paddington Bear. This is Ursun, the Kislev bear god of strength. And his imprisonment is causing all sorts of problems, like for example, his roar is normally used to get rid of winter, and that hasn't happened for several years. Enter mysterious man with book, who will now venture out into the world and encourage the leaders of great powers to go hunting for, or to try and set free, Kislev's big bear god. A side note, by the way, this is the wiki entry for Ursun on Warhammer Wiki, whilst this is him in game. This will never not be funny to me. All of this is set up in a wonderful tutorial that might be one of my favourite tutorials I've ever played. And that's a wild statement to say, might sound hyperbolic, but it's true. The prologue tells the story of a young Prince of Kislev venturing north to look for Big Bear and the ensuing hilarity that unfolds. It's got character motivation and a small narrative arc that is more compelling than any tutorial ever deserves to be. Albeit I have to say, you know where it's going if you've played similar games to this before, or you're even remotely familiar with Warhammer. The prologue will get you to grips with overworld exploration, actions and base management, whilst also holding your hand quite intently as it walks you through your first battles as well. The tutorial is is super new player friendly and it gets you up to speed nearly perfectly. Honestly, I would have liked it a little bit if it spent some time on how unit stats worked, because every unit has so many stats, I don't even know what they do after 10 hours, or how they interact with each other as well. I'm just throwing walls of meat at each other and hoping it goes well with a little bit of flanking at this point, but I'm sure I'll learn. But besides that minor gripe, I recommend everyone plays through the tutorial, as it not only helps you to get up to speed mechanically speaking, but it functions as a mini campaign of its own as well, with its own tech tree and unique hero, and it's way better than I expected it to be. It's way better than it ought to be. This is, like I said, the best tutorial I've probably ever played. After the prologue is done, the real fun begins. You have 8 playable factions to start with, each one with not only a unique staple of units for the battlefield and the matches, but also unique ways to play in the overworld as well. The Kislev are the Russian proxy from Warhammer Fantasy, bear riders, ice magic, and a strong devotion to the orthodoxy and their pantheon of gods, including the bear one that looks like Paddington. Demons of Chaos, or as modern Warhammer players will know it, Chaos Undivided. These guys get to play with all of the Chaos toys depending on how you spec during the game, but the balancing act of overworld management is a bit more complex and difficult than the other factions. This is the faction I spent the most time with, around 60-70 turns of it, because I found that a customizable Demon Prince leader unit is a big draw to the faction. It's really cool customizing this character. As your devotion to each of the gods grows, you unlock new body parts to alter your form, giving you a huge amount of RPG-like customization that makes you both visually unique and play differently depending on how you spec. And that's before we even get into the RPG style like progression system of the level ups as well. There's so much depth. I did find this faction the hardest to play, however, and more on that in a moment. Grand Cathay is the China proxy from Warhammer Fantasy, with focus on strong trade routes, balancing harmony, and shape-shifting heroes that transform into Asian-inspired dragons. The Ogre Kingdoms are a brutal, marauding band of barbaric cannibals. They can make temporary bases on the world map, and their economy is focused on meat. If you don't kill enough enemy armies to harvest their meat to eat, they will simply eat each other's meat. Khorne is my second most played faction at the moment, with around 30 turns, and they're the easiest to get into the game with, at first glance at least anyway. Settlement and overworld management is minimal. You're actually encouraged just to raise and burn down cities and massacre people as opposed to setting up permanent bases. Khorne is the god of war, blood, and murder for you that don't know, and he wants blood for the blood god and skulls for the skull throne. You may have heard that term before. The Khorne armies grow randomly from the ruins of destroyed settlements and get bonuses for harvesting the skulls of their enemies. They even have a mechanic where you can spawn a smaller friendly army so that your larger army can just kill them for fun. It's in order to keep your bloodlust up, your win streak up, shall we say, and to harvest more skulls. As a faction, they incentivize you to rip and tear and just go ham on the bloodshed, and it makes for a fun time being told to just be as aggressive as possible and throw caution to the wind. Then we have Papa Nurgle's lads, spreading disease. They are the tanky and resilient demon faction. They have a growth cycle to their overworld settlement production that focuses on rebirth, and they get to research and develop custom plagues and spread throughout the world. This is the faction that I thought I'd spend the most time with, but I just haven't got around to playing yet. Slaanesh are the followers of the Lord of Depravity themselves, the Dark Prince Slaanesh. You can seduce enemy units to join your forces prior to battle, and everything has a tentacle, or at least one boob. And lastly you have Tzeentch, the Master of Magic. His followers are more excited by spells and magic and conjuring and all that sort of stuff, and if you're into birds and a kind of avian aesthetic with a little bit of Egyptian thrown in there, this will be right up your alley. The central campaign has you, for one reason or another, looking to find a way into Be'lakor's little corner of the realms of chaos and find Ursun. Some, like the Kislev, want to free him, whilst others, like the Khorne faction, want his skull for their collection. Welcome to Warhammer, baby. To do this, you have to take on a rather video gamey style task of assembling a collection of Demon Prince hearts, one for each of the 4 gods, by entering an alternative realm map for each of the gods, fighting your way through it to a boss battle where you kill a big demon bad boy and take his heart for your collection of trinkets. Every 30 turns or so on the campaign map, warp rifts will open up, so in the meantime you want to grow your forces, crush your enemies, and engage in sweet Total War. Before I continue with my overall impressions of the game though and how it plays, I do need to tell you this is available on Game Pass for PC. I've spoken at length before on stream about how much I love Game Pass across both Xbox and PC as a platform. Game Pass is a monthly subscription service where you pay to have access to a plethora of high quality titles from a ton of development studios, often on day one. I personally pay $10.99 a month for the ultimate version because I play a ton of different stuff across Xbox and PC as well, and I was super hyped to see Warhammer Total War 3 was available on day one with Game Pass on PC. Once signed up, you can use the desktop app to install the game to your PC and get to playing. playing. I know this is a paid sponsorship bit, but I've said it many times on stream before, and I cannot stress it enough what a good value proposition Game Pass is. Just the amount of content you get for your monthly payment. I've played a ton of stuff that I never would have even touched before if it weren't for Game Pass. I've been using it for literally years at this point, and if you want to play a variety of games and great new AAA games like Warhammer Total War 3 on day one, then Game Pass is legitimately such a good deal. If you want to get signed up for Game Pass, there's a link in the description of the video, and clicking that link will help to support the channel and the content that I make. So far, I've been having a blast with Warhammer Total War 3. I found my first 60 or so turns of Chaos Undivided to be quite difficult. It was my first campaign, so I made a few blunders with things that I just didn't know or understand yet. For example, at one point I thought the game had broken, but I was actually in the wrong marching order, so my army just couldn't engage my enemies. My bad. I also didn't realise that I needed my main lord to enter the rifts into the realm of chaos, so I sent him off exploring and stomping enemies in foreign lands, only to find that my home army couldn't even enter the rift next to my capital. Whoopsie. But once you start to get to grips with these things, your second campaign start is so much smoother. Khorne as a faction really helped to enable me just to get all up in the faces of the factions around me and dive into the realms of chaos as soon as I could, where I found that if I got in there very early on when the rifts opened, the armies inside were weaker than my forays in with the Chaos Undivided, where I took my sweet time. The forces of chaos grow stronger, it turns out, over time. Who would have known? The battles look great for the most part. I absolutely love the amount of detail and character in the models and the animations. Seeing Nurglings and Beasts of Nurgle brought to life from the tabletop is always a joy, and the sheer variety of units available in the game is staggering. From big bear riding cavalry to mythical dragons to little gribblies to ranged spellcasting blue horrors to men who accidentally got their hands transformed into a claw. And all of this can be a bit daunting. The amount of information on display at any one time, both in world map and battle, can be a bit daunting for a first time player or someone who's returning to Total War after years of not playing. But personally, I find complexity like this in game systems and the granularity of the army compositions and their stats. It brings a lot of depth to the gameplay, and that's something that I want from a game like this. There is a super active community of content creators out there talking through how certain units line up into others, and what is good right now and what is overtuned and similar. It reminds me of a lot of the circles I inhabit for other games like Tabletop Warhammer, for example. And that granularity and that complexity, it makes it more rewarding when things go right. When you split off part of your forces to cover a side path through the woodland, which means the enemy can't flank you, or when you highly fast move the unit like hounds in a tree line and get them into the enemy's backlines to harass their archers, or when you distract them by harassing them with flyers, allowing you to reposition to the higher ground to improve your charges. You start to feel like a fucking genius. But at other times you just select or right click and max out the battle speed because we just gotta get to mopping them up now, lads. The battles themselves do appear to have a bit more variety than the Total War games of old from my youth. There are waves in the story and boss battles where you clear out enemy forces only to learn that it reveals a second force beyond the veil, and there are 3 stages of footholds to take in some maps that you can see straight away. With each foothold you take, you have buildable towers and defences to defend your position as reinforcements arrive to defend the keep. This adds almost an element of tower defense gameplay to combating the flanking reinforcements, which, whilst it's a rather, I don't know, bare bones tower defense thing, it does add some variety to the proceedings. And then beyond that, there are sieges, there are settlement battles, there's a wide variety of varied landscapes with their own impacts on battle. There just feels like so much to explore, from units to maps to battle types. Every character in the game has an RPG-like upgrade system, like I mentioned earlier, as they level, which gives you a huge amount of variety in how you spec them. It can be things that affect the macro overworld, like your passive income, your control, or your corruption output, or it can be their abilities in combat, so you can just boss people in the face. Do you spec into unlocking the disruptive battlefield spells, or do you take the route of getting as much income early on so you can throw more larger or varied armies at your opponents over and over? It's got depth, and I really can't wait to dive deeper into that. And the beautiful thing is as well, you can play 8-player simultaneously turn-based campaign co-op with friends. I've yet to get the chance to because I had early access and I had to make this video, but I'm planning to give that a shot on my Discord at least once. We get together for an evening and 8 of us play one of the campaign missions. I can't wait to get absolutely destroyed. I hope you found this video interesting and informative. I know it's a paid sponsorship video, but I wanted to cover Total War 3 anyway, and I'm planning to do a little bit of streaming of it too, because it's a game I've been looking forward to for a while. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think I was too kind to the game? How are your first impressions of it as well? I'd love to hear. And if you haven't picked it up yet, you can do so through Game Pass with a link in the description below, and that helps to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.